Ladies and gentlemen, there is no shortage of opinions on SCHD. In fact, Seeking Alpha has multiple different authors with differing positions on whether or not SCHD is the premier ETF that a lot of people seem to think it is. It's sort of a darling of dividend investors, especially on YouTube Finance, and I can understand the reasons for that. The Schwab US Dividend Equity ETF, we'll just call it SCHD for short, follows the Dow Jones US Dividend 100 Index. Now, this index was designed specifically to measure the performance of high dividend yielding stocks in the US with a, according to them, record of consistently paying dividends selected for fundamental strength relative to their peers based on financial ratios. Simple translation: they are taking stocks that yield over a certain amount. Now, based on the holdings in there, it seems like all of the holdings, or at least the vast majority, yield above the market average. And they do, from what I saw, all have at least multi-year dividend paying streaks. So they've paid dividends consistently on a consistent schedule for a pretty long time. I don't recall seeing anything on the list that had recent dividend cuts. And here's another part: selected for fundamental strength relative to their peers based on financial ratios. So your financial ratios are things like your price to book, your price to earnings, price to free cash flow. There's also measures regarding things like enterprise value, or potentially earnings or cash flow compared to your long-term liabilities, etc. So basically, they have some kind of, set criteria with these different ratios, and they look at each, sector basically for the, good dividend payers, and pick the ones that they like those financial ratios the best, basically. So that's kind of what this is. And the Dow is one of those things where it's kind of weird to call it an index. It's not an index the same way the S&P 500 is, right? The S&P 500 is simply, the 500 biggest U.S.-based companies by market cap or whatever. Now, they do weight this by market cap here. So when you look at the holdings of SCHD, you do see that some of the companies are sitting there at 3-4%, and some of them are at 0.5%. It looks like that's based primarily on market cap. Now, the expense ratio that they charge to basically passively rebalance this portfolio in accordance with the Dow Dividend 100 is 0.06%. So pretty negligible, honestly, on the expense ratio there. But it is something that you're having to pay out of your assets that you invest nonetheless. Now, let's see. When you look at their holdings, like I said, you see a lot of companies that definitely pay out an above market dividend, right? Like you've got Cisco, AbbVie, Chevron, Coke, Pepsi, and a lot of consumer staples, right? Defensive stocks, telecoms, pharmaceuticals, a lot of stuff that, again, pays higher dividends, and again, is considered pretty defensive. Like, they would not be prone to suddenly completely go out of business or collapse in the event of market pullbacks, right? You've got Altria Group, which, I also own. You got T. Rowe Price down here, lower on the list. A lot of companies that I personally either own myself or have at least added to a watch list or considered owning at some point. So definitely, no real complaints about the kind of stocks they have in the fund. You're not going to have any like tattooed chefs or Anali Capitals or anything like that in here. These are mostly real established businesses, mid to large market cap, stalwarts in the market, the kind of companies where if they completely went bankrupt, you would probably be pretty darn surprised to hear it. I would be pretty surprised if any of these companies, at least especially the ones closer to the top of the list, were not around in 10, 15, 20 years, okay? So there is like a certain amount of quality contained herein, as well as a solid yield, all right? The whole fund averages out, let's see here. They have the yield up here somewhere. Oh, yes. 3.63%, 30-day, trailing 12 months, 3.44%. So, again, way above the market, the overall market on that. So, for people kind of considering like, oh, I want to retire on passive dividend income, I want diversification, etc., this is potentially a viable option for you. Now, my own personal take is I kind of prefer, selecting my own. That's why I don't have any shares of SCHD at the moment. But here, you can see those ratios that they were talking about a few minutes ago. Price to earnings ratio average is 13.87. Price to free cash flow 8.98. Yeah. So again, this is one of those things where, yes, this looks like it's probably pretty much in value territory in a lot of cases. These are not, they don't have an average PE of 18, 20, 22, 25. So that's why you don't see like Apple or Visa or anything in this portfolio, right? The yields aren't high enough, the PEs are too high, etc., at least for the criteria that this fund selects for. Beta versus benchmark 3-year 1.0. So yeah, basically low volatility, comparatively speaking, or actually that's not actually low volatility. Sorry, that's actually basically market matching. It's just normal volatility. So they don't have a lot of, again, high volatility stocks in here. Again, management style passive, meaning they have a certain formula for weighting, and then they rebalance it periodically to match the underlying Dow Dividend 100 index and the weighting that they use, which the information I saw said that it was basically market cap based. And yeah, this fund, definitely not the worst possible thing to buy in the market. I'm personally not in, but I think might be a fun experiment for me to do at some point would be to maybe buy equal amounts of SCHD and then create like a custom pie on M1 Finance with 50 to 100 dividend stocks that I pick out, and just see which one, like buy equal amounts at the same time periodically, and just see which one happens to perform better over a year, 2 years, 3 years, etc. That would be a really long-term project, but I enjoy that kind of thing, so maybe you'll see that in the future. But yeah, that's just my explanation and rundown of SCHD. In the comments below, let me know if you own SCHD or if you've stayed away from it like me in order to, pick your own, more or less. Or if there's a different ETF that you personally prefer in place of SCHD. Also, make sure you like, subscribe, and join the Discord, link in the description. Become a channel member, less than $0.05 a day. Gets you one step closer to my inner circle. Take it easy, everyone. Have a wonderful weekend.